Welcome to another episode from the Norfolk Herald. You'll have gathered from the way the start went this morning that it's extremely cold. Excuse me. It's only a few degrees above freezing, and this is the first time the Herald has been out for at least a fortnight. We've been away, and then I had another dose of man flu, which you can probably hear I'm still sort of spluttering a bit, so if I do cough I apologise. And then the weather wasn't very good, so yeah, she's been sitting there in the garage undercover, forlornly waiting for a time to go out, and this is her time. I think if it wasn't today, then it's likely there'll be salt on the roads tonight, if not more rain. So, and she really does need a run, as do I, of course. So this is going to be a bit different. We hear a lot nowadays about whether cars of this ilk, she's now 56 years old, made in 1969, whether cars of this ilk and age and so on are suitable either as daily drivers, or whether they ought to be limited just to high days outings, and probably kept to the B roads because they get in the way of modern traffic. Well, yes, no doubt there's certain classics which that does apply to, particularly the pre-war ones, I suppose, unless you're getting into really exotic territory with sporty engines and high gearing and all that. But for the post-war cars, I suppose the immediate post-war period, the 40s and coming into the 50s, yeah, there were some designs that were still a little bit old hat and couldn't be driven too fast. However, I think by the time we get to the 60s, things have changed slightly. Having said that, my first car was a 1968 Morris 1800, which I was very lucky to get when I passed my test in 71. And so that was a car that was of much more modern development than the Herald that we're driving. And that, I certainly, from memory, that showed in the way she performed. She would happily do 70 all day, and 80. And I do believe my father, on one occasion, did actually take her up to 95, but we won't go into that. On the other hand, he can't be prosecuted because he's no longer with us. But what about this? Well, I suppose you see the Herald was first mooted as a design in the late 1950s, wasn't it? I think the first one came out in 59, was it? The 948 cc, which had only got 30 odd brake horsepower, This that we're in today, of course, is the last iteration of the Herald, the 1360, which has got a 1300 engine and 60 brake horsepower. So obviously got a bit more poke to it. However, of course, it was developed for different roads. I suppose the best roads that were around at the time were perhaps this sort of class road, where traffic on the whole would be doing 45, 50, and that would mainly be the limit of it. And it's a good job we're doing under the speed limit, isn't it? Because there's a van ahead with his little camera pointed straight at us, but we're wise to that because they're very often there. So I think what I'm saying is, apart from, very few miles of motorway when these cars first came out, what I'm on today is typical of the best sort of road that these cars would drive on. So they weren't necessarily engineered to drive particularly quickly over long periods of time. Of course, fast forward 40 odd years and Britain now has dual carriageways and motorways connecting most of the major towns, and cars have been developed to the extent where they really are capable of travelling at 70 or 80 comfortably and quietly all day. A lot of that is due to sound insulation and the refinement of engines, of course, all of which has added a lot of weight to cars, even if we ignore the excessive weight that you now get with electric vehicles. I looked up the weight of this the other day, and it's 865 kilograms, which is a pretty light car, isn't it, for a 1300? It actually works out at something like 70 brake horsepower per tonne. The other car that I have in the stable, well, it's actually my wife's, but I'm sure she won't mind me calling it ours, is a Toyota Hybrid Auris, and the weight of that is around 1465, I think. The difference in the two weights between the Auris and the Herald that we're in at the moment equates to the weight of something like a Fiat 500. That's food for thought, isn't it? Because the Auris Hybrid is certainly one of the more light cars on the road nowadays. I was looking up, the weights of some of the heaviest cars around, and some of these large EVs are over 3 tons, 3,000 kilograms. That's a lot of weight, so no wonder the roads are getting battered about. Anyway, I've gone off at a tangent, haven't I? We're here today actually to see whether the old Herald can keep up with modern traffic and whether it would be decent as a daily driver. First confession I've got to make, and I'll only mention this once, just in case there's any officers of the law tuning in. The speedo does read a little bit low. I'm hoping you can perhaps see where it is at the moment. It's hovering around the 40, so we're probably doing about 45. She's comfortable at this speed, of course, and surprisingly for this road, I haven't actually had any traffic behind me, so I'm not holding anybody up, which is quite pleasant for a change. I just forgot that I'd not got the heater on. I just turned it on there. Anyway, we have a 50 mile an hour limit here, so we'll now open her up a bit, and the needle's now hovering around the 50, so we're perhaps doing slightly more than 50 in actual fact, so I'll just pull it down a bit. Now to me this seems, with the hood up anyway, to be about the best speed you can get if you were going to go on a longish run. The slightly slower speed you may not have been able to detect it. I don't know if you can see that vehicle on the right hand side there, but he obviously came a cropper. Yeah, I don't know if you could detect it, but there's a sort of thrumming reverberation around the speed we're doing now, sort of the 40-45-ish mark, and that goes away when we get to 50. So 50 is certainly a viable speed, and as I say, I'm down here today on the A10, oh heavens, I ought to know what it is, either the 1065 or the 1075. 1065 I think, I'll tell you in a minute. And we're not holding anybody up, so we're certainly keeping up with the mob traffic here. I'm not going to go that much faster on this road because I want the car to be thoroughly warmed up before we get to the A11, which is where I will open the taps up a bit. Oh yeah, could you go on a long trip in one of these? I think you'd get used to it with the hood up. It's a lot better with the hood down on a sunny summer's day. But I think you could get used to this. I think the furthest we've done in a day has been something like 150 miles. With some stops in between. That was to attend a classic car show, and we got back and we were still alive, and we'd still got all our nerves. They hadn't been jangled out of our ears, so yeah, you could do it. So we're now coming through a bit of Thetford Forest. This is at Great Hockham. Thetford Forest, of course, was planted in the early part of the 20th century to start with. Mainly coniferous forest, but over the years, as the demand for straight trunks of timber for pit props and that sort of thing, over the years as that's declined, then broadleaf species have been allowed to take hold again, so slowly the forest is becoming much more diversified. So now we have got one or two fast ones have caught up behind us, but this is a 40-mile-an-hour limit and I'm doing 40. Sorry about the state of the windscreen, by the way. I didn't actually notice that it was dirty until we got out on the road. So this is the village of East Wretham, and on the right hand side, you can't see it from here, but a little way down there is Wretham Camp. Which is one of the 3 camps on the Stanford Battle area. So I was talking earlier about the weight of cars nowadays. It's having a definite impact on the condition of the roads as more and more large vehicles, heavy vehicles, are pounding away at the roads. of course, these large electric vehicles are purportedly going to help us save the planet. I don't know. We can't keep going on burning fossil fuels at the rate we're burning them, I suppose. And eventually they're going to run out anyway. However, the manufacture of a modern or brand new electric vehicle produces a lot of pollution in itself, causes a lot of natural disruption in the areas where these rare earths are mined, uses a lot of energy in its production. So one wonders really whether the use of a rather unfuel efficient vehicle like this one, where all its manufactured pollution was made 56 years ago and she's still here doing what she was built for, is it any more polluting than buying yourself a brand new electric vehicle? I don't know. Mind you, of course, they didn't make them to last in the days these were built, did they? My father-in-law bought a new Fiat, must have been in the early 1970s, and within the space of 3 months he'd got rust appearing on his doors. The Herald didn't have a much better reputation either, I'm sorry to say. Which is one of the reasons why I'm careful with this one when I take her out. She does not want to see salt. Coming up here, we're now going to go across the railway line that goes between Norwich, Thetford, onwards to Ely. A large pig farm there on the right hand side. We have several of these in Norfolk, particularly in the Breckland area, where some of our soils are not of the best quality for growing crops. They certainly grow some good pigs. We're coming now to the outskirts of Thetford, the junction with the A11, and I can just tell you now that we were on the A1075. I always get the 1075 and the 1065 mixed up. So this is going to be the test now, isn't it, as to whether we can keep up with the traffic. Is the 1300 an embarrassment on a dual carriageway? So there's an indicated 50. Bearing in mind what I said earlier about the speedo. Here's an indicated 60. And look at this, the Herald can overtake. what you can probably hear now is excessive engine noise as well as excessive wind noise. And of course that's the other thing that I was going to get round to saying. Because these cars weren't engineered to go on these sort of roads, the revolutions per the revolutions of the engine are rather higher than they would be on a modern car. These are much more lower geared. So I think maybe the answer to what I was saying is yes, we could use her quite happily as a daily driver, but we probably wouldn't want to go over 60. However, if we put an overdrive gearbox on her, then she could certainly pull that. But yeah, I don't want to keep her up there in the high rev ranges permanently without an overdrive gearbox. But let's just give her another little blast. I reckon this is about 70. And it's a bit loud. As you can hear, she picks up well. Probably heard my sigh there. Clearly these sort of speeds are more appropriate for the Herald. than your 60s and 70s. So we now turn back on the B road that heads back up towards the 1075 and then onwards into Watton. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little outing in the Herald. We had a little bit of a blast up the road, didn't we? So that was good. As you can see, here she is now, ticking over nicely. Hopefully none the worse for wear. So if you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to the channel. It certainly lets me know that you appreciate what I'm doing, and it also helps the channel to grow. The more we can grow the channel, the more people will get to see what we do, see a bit of the Norfolk countryside. Look, I'm a little bit stuck at the moment for stuff to take you to, ploughing matches and that sort of thing, because there aren't any now until just after Christmas, so that's more than a month ahead. That reminds me, must do some Christmas shopping. Anyway, on that note, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.